the idea for Attenuation almost as a movie. It came into my head as a thing, and I had this picture of a guy waking up in a dark room with the awareness that he was stretched all the way across space or something between two instances of himself. And that idea that it reminds me, it's kind of, I think it comes out of that idea that jet lag is your soul getting left behind, which crops up in pattern recognition, but which I think may have been around before that. And it's the idea of being literally attenuated like that, stretched out, and the notion of your consciousness as a kind of increasingly stretched thread, getting thinner and thinner in the middle. It was a kind of harsh, the kind of industrial setting, a bloke waking up in a kind of medicalised situation, and you know he's flashing back between that and this kind of party that he was at, and he's attenuated, and from then on he's as it were solving his own murder or his own accident. I think when I first thought about it, I was thinking ultra low budget UK sci-fi film, because you know actually it's one of those science fiction premises where you don't need anything at all. You need a warehouse. And that's kind of it, you know, and then you need like someone's flat. I did a piece a while ago for something which I'd really like to do as a full-length novel, and I haven't had the moment to do it yet. But talking about space and space exploration as sort of humdrum, almost agricultural kind of setting. These are the trawlermen in their seagull shack popovers was the kind of, you know, and that was the vibe. And you know, at a certain point, if we achieve something with the technology, it then instantly becomes grotty and gritty and industrial. And that's a moment that I find quite interesting. You know, it's easy, no, it's not easy. It's commonplace to look at technology from the side of it where it looks glossy. It's less commonplace and kind of more fun to look at it once it's kind of boring for the people involved, and for us we're kind of, you know, and then you get to hopscotch the place where it's silver suits and rockets and everyone lives in a kind of white picket fence house in an orbital. And you get to go straight to the stage where people are discovering the problems with it, and it's, you know, it's difficult again, because there's actually one of the things that's difficult writing about technology, whether you're writing about you know real technology which is coming, or you know unreal technology which might one day be possible, is this thing of when you write about it, it sounds utopian automatically, because we always know we'll never be able to do that. Well, actually, we probably will, but you know, or something like it. But as soon as you start writing about a technology which kind of might once have felt utopian, but now kind of everyone goes, oh, you know, it's so annoying, it doesn't work properly, it's dangerous, you know, then that's a world we understand again. Charles Babbage's book about himself, basically an auto-hagiography. It's like, I'm so awesome. But one of the things which is wonderful in it is the passage between him and Brunel, where they're approaching one another on a train line, on separate steam engines, and they're basically driving towards one another. And at the last minute, I think one of them goes into a siding, or you know, it turns out they're on different tracks, but they weren't sure. But anyway, Babbage afterwards, because these guys are mates, you know, Babbage turns around to Brunel and says, "What would you have done if we'd actually been on the same line?" And Brunel kind of thinks about it. And he says, well, actually what I'd have done is piled on the steam so that I had as much power as possible, so that the superior momentum, the energy of my train would have just torn yours off the track, and you'd have died just in pieces, but I'd have survived. These guys were petrol heads, you know. They were those guys who go out into the desert and strap rockets to the backs of small cars. That's what they were into, and they were doing it with government funding, which is slightly awesome. But also, that's who they were. And when I was taught about the Industrial Revolution at school, you know, the teacher almost literally walked into the classroom at the beginning of the year and said, "This is going to be the boring year. You know, we've got to do the Industrial Revolution." And it bloody was. Everything has to be digital. We're putting digitization into running shoes, for God's sake. If these guys could have found a way to put a tiny steam engine in your heels so that you could go really, really fast, and it turned out every so often these things malfunctioned and blew your foot off, they would have gone with that. They'd have been like, yes, excellent, you know, rocket shoes. And it's absolutely extraordinary. I went to a party the other day, and the woman I was talking to literally, to my mind anyway, just ran down the list of the top 10 or top 5 things that the Daily Telegraph has worried about the internet in the last 2 years, as if they were all just true. And you know, and I was saying, well, you know, I use social media quite a lot. And, you know, it doesn't actually make me stupid or lonely, you know, and it doesn't distract me from my work, and it's actually part of my work. But also, you know, I use it for research. I use it to talk to people about, you know, well, and I enjoy meeting people on social media. I have a great time. And you know, her response was, well, you know, clearly it's damaging your brain. And I couldn't shift her from that. You know, she was just finding more reasons to be worried about it. Things like freedom and peace, you know, are verbs. They're actions, continuing things, not single states that you can just sort of fire and forget about. And it's nice to get locked into them. You have to remember that you've still got to maintain them. But you know, actually, if we could get locked into those for a few decades, I'd be really thrilled. You know, and I mean, we're talking about, obviously, we've gone broader than just sort of technology, but that's the thing about lock-in in this context, is it's not actually just about whether we end up with the wrong file format. You know, it's about software and websites and digital design which create institutions which then create the society we live in. And I believe very strongly, and I think this comes across in the book, that we have to start learning to, or thinking about coding the institutions that we want in order to create the society that we desire. I worry about the idea which is current in politics right now, or in discussions of government and how we do it, that liberal paternalism is the way forward, and that making biased choice architectures is a way to get people to do the liberal thing and therefore to run a country. And that bugs me. And so the idea is you pick a topic where you think people are inert on something that they ought to be fired up about. You present them with the choice in a new way, which is basically the kind of Yes Prime Minister classic. Sort of two options which are unpalatable or uncomfortable, one which is just radically insane and unacceptable, and one which is the option you want them to pick. And they, of course, pick the fourth one, and you go, how marvellous, this is the democratic process in action. It's not the democratic process in action. What it is actually is the creation of a habit of biased choice architectures, and ultimately what you get is a population who have never been confronted with a difficult choice, never been asked to exercise their judgment in a proper way, because everything they receive is a kind of 10%, 10%, 80% choice. You know, and that's a disaster zone for a democratic society. That kind of thing, obviously, is made more possible by the sophisticated gathering and analysis of data. Does anybody want to put their hand up and say that the last 100 years was so damn perfect that we shouldn't try to move away from the perception of humanity that brought it to us? Because I don't see it that way. I don't look at the last 100 years and think, wow, awesome, let's do that over again. I look at it and go, wow, I'm glad we're not doing that anymore. You know, there is some stuff in there that we really don't need to go back to, and perhaps we could try, you know, a new perception and move forwards. And I think it's significant that of all the uses you could put the technology which makes the internet possible to, massive broadcast, massive surveillance and so on. Yeah, all right, we do those things, but we also chose a technology we cottoned onto and created and bought and went with and wanted a technology which allowed us all to talk to one another across the world and across, you know, all kinds of distinctions and boundaries which don't matter online. And we wanted that, and we wanted Twitter, and we wanted Facebook, and we got them. You know, that's, I think, significant. What would be the traits of the brain which was created by the way that we live now? You know, because we've heard a lot about it, we had a lot of suggestions about how it's bad. I think, actually, the interesting thing about reading online, reading multiple sources of information about one singular event or one argument, and bringing them together in your own head and forming an opinion, is that it's actually about not accepting the authority of a single other person to tell you what the truth is, which has to be a good thing. You know, so I want to know what the neuroscientific picture is, and then what, extending from that, what the kind of social scientific picture is of a world where people live with synthetic reading, creative reading, rather than reading from an authority source. And you know, actually, I think that could be really interesting, and it might even, hold your breath, be good.